Hey guys, welcome to the Launchpad, and thanks for joining me with the rest of the Rehab Rebels. If you don't already know, the Rehab Rebels are on a mission to launch out of the rat race, and we're committed to doing it together. If entrepreneurship, real estate, and passive income mean as much to you as they do to us, then you're in the right place. Sit back, buckle up, and prepare for launch. If you're enjoying our episodes, don't forget to subscribe to the Launchpad and like us on Spotify. Just tap one of the links below. By subscribing, you'll get new episodes delivered straight to your library every week. I'm here today with the legend of customer service, Jim Alderman. Jim has been in the mortgage industry for over 40 years and more than 30 of those with NASB. And in that time, Jim has closed over 17,000 mortgages for more than $3 billion. And today he's here to shed some light on how he made that happen. So over the years, we've sent numerous clients to Jim, and for really one reason. If we send someone to Jim and he tells us, hey, I can't help this person, it's the truth. He'll tell you right up front. And if he can help them, he'll do it. He's a guy that you can depend on. He does what he says. And I think that's probably a big part of why you've closed 17,000 mortgages. So thank you, Jim, for joining me today. And I'm looking forward to all of our clients. No matter what business you're in the sales business. And so I'm hoping that everyone can pull some things from your story and some of the lessons learned and the hard knocks of how you got to be such a successful person. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you.
You told me that your family was not actually in the real estate business or the mortgage business. What was your family background?
Well, my mother was a school teacher and my father was a chemist. And through their careers, they thought that their retirement should be spent selling real estate. So they were more or less part-time real estate agents in the latter part of their working careers. So I was introduced to lending and real estate through them.
Did they encourage you to get into the real estate business, or what did you go to school for?
Well, I got a degree in accounting. As I was in school, I would learn pretty much what I didn't want to do for the rest of my life, more so than what I did. Mm-hmm. So my last class in college was an auditing class, and I hated it. And I'm like, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. So instead of pursuing that, I pursued additional education, got a master's degree in finance, was interviewing to take a job with the comptroller of the currency, which would have been a bank examiner, and honestly couldn't see myself doing that either. And at the time, one of my really good friends was living in a beautiful house, driving a beautiful car, and my circumstances were totally different. I was in my parents' basement driving a car that I had to park on a hill to jumpstart. And I figured, perhaps, if he can do it and be so successful, I could possibly do it also. So that's how I ended up in the mortgage industry.
So did you ever spend time working as an accountant at a bank, or did you get straight into mortgages right out of school?
Went straight into the mortgage business. I had learned enough to know what I didn't want to do. So I never ever did anything in regard to bank examining or any sort of accounting.
That's a rare story of someone who gets into their lifelong career right off the bat. I don't know if I've met anyone who hit the nail on the head right from the start.
Well, everything that I've done has been accidental. You know, I had no idea that I was going to enjoy it, and I would have success in it when I started, but it seemed like if you were willing to go to work and tell people the truth and do your best, you could do really well. And I had a lot of people always come and try to hire me away from wherever I was. And my same response was, if I could make it work, somewhere else, I could probably make it work where I was. So the circumstances just allowed me to make as much money as I was willing to work. And, the business was that of being very relational and making friends and business associates pretty much every day in my life. And that worked really well with my personality and my skill set.
You told me the other day, if you're going to be average, real estate is not a good business to be average in. Why?
I stole that, by the way. And everything good I have, I probably stole from someone else. But the average real estate agent does not make very much money. You have to be excellent. And the ones that are excellent make a ton of money. And I think over the last 12 to 24 months, the average lender has not done very well. So if you're not going to be really, really good at home lending or really, really good at real estate, you're probably going to starve to death. So, if you are going to take on the real estate or lending business, you better go for it and be excellent at it.
So that first year that you got into the business, you were looking at comptroller on one hand and getting out into the mortgage business on the other. How did that decision weigh out for you in the first year?
Well, originally, when I got out in accounting, the job offers were anywhere between $16,000 and $18,000 a year. And then when I got my grad degree, the comptroller of the currencies were starting at about $35,000 a year. And my first year in mortgage lending, I closed about $15 million worth of loans, which made me about $75,000, which was way more money than I thought I would make, and pretty much more money than anybody that I graduated with in accounting or my finance degree was making at the time.
What do you attribute that to? Was it luck? Was it hard work? How did you do so well in your first year?
Well, I think that with anything that you take on, you can control only two things, which is your effort and your attitude. And I was in a world where if I met somebody and they were writing a real estate transaction, that I had the ability to make around $500, which at the time, $500 was a lot of money. And I just never took a day off. I worked Saturdays, I worked Sundays. I found that the real estate offices, the people that were in it on the weekends were usually putting together deals. So I would just go out and talk to people. I'd bring them cookies or donuts, or I found early on that people were more receptive to me when I came with something like that versus just showing up and asking for something. So, I just couldn't imagine not going to work and not trying to put deals together at the time. And, you just put one deal together and then another and another, and before you know it, it becomes 17,000 deals over time. So somebody once told me, and I think it's true, that the only difference between winning and losing is winners do the right things consistently. And losers do the right things inconsistently. So it was just my willingness to get up and go to work every day and try to put together as many transactions and help as many people as I possibly could that ended up making me successful.
Another quote that you had mentioned was a Zig Ziglar quote that's pretty popular, but if you help enough people get what they need, you don't have to worry about getting what you need. Yeah,
I never was concerned, was I going to make a commission or how many commissions I was going to make. I knew, if I was able to help people get what they wanted, everything was going to take care of itself. Some of the most money I made is when I took people that I didn't do a transaction with, but sent them somewhere else where they were able to get a better deal. And, it's not only the right thing to do, it's the right business move to make too, because even though they didn't do that single transaction with me, they told everybody about what had occurred. And over time, I made much, much more money than I would have had I just done their transaction.
Yeah, I mean, I heard your reputation before I had even met you. Bernie was telling me from early on, Jim's a guy that you can count on to do what he says he's going to do. And he even included the fact that you don't always help all of the clients that he sends, but you'll shoot them straight. And that reputation, I've heard that from other people too. And it's really the long game. You know, it's not, you're not necessarily making your kill today. You're patient, you're playing the long game, you're helping people with what they need today, whatever that might be, even if it's not you. And then eventually it comes back. Is that pretty much how it's gone?
Yeah, it's the harvest. It's, you know, the way that I look at what we do in the mortgage business is we're farmers and we're hunters. Mm-hmm. So the phone rings and somebody needs you to put together a transaction to close a house. You're like a hunter. I mean, you got the people in front of you, you help them, and you get paid. But the majority of the people that call you, what you do is you give them good advice. When they take your advice, you know, later on down the road, just like the harvest, I mean, if you water it and you take good care of it, you don't have to worry about the fall coming and there being nothing there. So a lot of my transactions will start off with a phone call and end with the loan maybe 6, 7, or 8 months later after the people did this stuff. I always told people, I'll give you a map. I'll tell you what you need to do to get to where you want to. And if you follow the steps on the map, you're going to be fine. And I never worried about, oh my goodness, you know, I'm not going to close this transaction for 6 months. You know, what am I going to have to spend this month? Because again, just like anything else, as long as you do the right things and help people get what they want every single day, you know, you have a big pipeline of loans and things are closing that you've helped other people with.
Yeah. You told me that your folks had you pay for high school.
Yes.
And for college. So I know you've got just an intense work ethic. And is that something that you must have always had that if you're paying for high school?
Well, I think in my family it was just a given. You know, my parents were working class people. There were 5 kids. And, you know, I've been pretty much on my own from a young age. You know, if I wanted a car, I knew what I had to do. I had to go to work. I had to make the money. I had to have the money for gas. I had to have the money for insurance. So I think from an early age, I knew that if I wanted something, that I had to go to work and I had to save the money to have it because nobody was giving me anything. And I really honestly think I've got 5 kids and I don't necessarily make them pay for everything or work for everything. And it's probably a disservice because my generation, it wasn't unusual that everybody paid their own way as they went. And I think because we paid our own way, I think that we try harder to take care of our kids and try to pay for more than probably is even helpful to them.
Yeah. The pendulum swings one way and then it swings back the other way.
Yeah.
I've seen that in your generation. A lot of hardworking people had to grind and then they've gone the other way. And with the kids, they don't want their kids to have to go through that much torture. And so it swings back the other way.
Yeah. When I paid for my own high school, I valued it more. When I paid for my college, I valued it more. I went to more classes. I studied harder. You know, there's a saying, you know, the guy that carries the water values every drop in the bucket, you know, and if you don't, and the water's just there, you don't. So I think that working to get what you want and knowing that you have that ability on your own is the making of you.
With that being said, philosophically, is it a good thing to leave an inheritance to your kids? Or should you leave them with a few bucks and let them make their own way? What's better for them?
Well, I think that you set up a legacy. I think that if you can leave money so college is paid for, or they don't have to go into debt to do things, it's probably a really good thing. But if you just set them up and they don't have to do anything, that is not a service you're giving them.
Yeah.
So somewhere in between. That's always the answer, right? It's never one or the other. It's usually somewhere in between.
Yeah, yeah. So for someone who wants to follow in your footsteps, is it a 7-day-a-week, 365 for 40 years to do what you've done?
No.
Or you don't have to go that hard?
No.
But you went that hard for a while, right?
Of course.
How long did you have to go that hard?
Well, I don't think I took a day off for 3 to 5 years. So every day for 3 to 5 years, I didn't take a day off. I remember still to this day, I'm a little uncomfortable when I'm taking time off because I'm thinking, there might be a deal out there that maybe I'm not going to be able to do because I'm not working. So what I've done is I built up a referral network. And those people are going to send me deals regardless if I answer the phone at 11 o'clock at night. But I still do answer the phone if it rings. I think I do. A little bit of fear is good. I think that my fear is at the beginning of every single month, am I going to have a good month? Nothing's guaranteed. I only, my line is I eat what I kill.
Yep.
So there's enough fear that still resides in me that this month I'm not going to do a single deal. That if somebody calls me, no matter when they call me, I'm going to answer it. So that never does happen.
You told me that there was a turning point in your career. You said for the first 20 years you did well, but you said stagnant growth. And then something happened and you took off. What changed?
Well, I went kicking and screaming to a Brian Buffini training session.
What do you mean kicking and screaming? Why you didn't want to go?
I didn't want to go.
So why go? How did you know about it?
Well, so I wanted somebody else to go and then come back and give me the Reader's Digest version. I didn't want to take the 2 days off work. That was necessary to get the information. But I went, and I was in the room, and one of the first things Brian said was, people are spending money they don't have to impress people that they don't even know. And I'm like, that's me. So, he just kind of talked to me, in the spirit of working by referral. The best way to work by referral is to do the right thing for everybody and then have them, instead of patting you on the back all day long, have them pass it along, have them tell other people. Brian has a saying, it's called, oh, by the way. So instead of saying, send me a deal, you say, oh, by the way, if you know anybody else that would benefit from the services that you have received from me, please call me with their name and number so I can help them out too.
I've gotten several of those cards from you.
There you go.
Oh, by the way. Yeah.
Again, just because you systemize something, because that's a good thing to systemize something, doesn't mean that it's not meaningful, because I have a staff of people that make sure that my thank you for the referral cards go out. And I'll be out and about and somebody will say, thank you for the card. And to be completely honest, I had little or nothing to do with it. But I set up a system so that anybody that sends us a deal is recognized and shown appreciation.
You were successful before doing that. What were you doing besides that leading up to Buffini?
Well, it's funny because I was successful enough that people would come and they would want to observe why I was successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, you're welcome to come if you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And they would get there and they would say, what are you doing? And I said, well, I just go to work every day. And when the phone rings, I answer it and I try to help the person on the other line. And they're like, no, what do you do to get the phone to ring? And I said, well, you just do a real good job. If you do a real good job, the word will go around and enough people will call you. But I had a period of time where I had done more business each year than the year before, but it was not very much more. So the way that I was handling the working by referral was not working. So when I walked into Buffini and he offered a plan, a systematic plan to recognize and reward people that were sending you business, my business grew very much. I went from doing about 60 million in a very, very, very good market to doing somewhere in the 90s in a tougher market. So I think that, it doesn't matter how good you are at what you do if nobody knows about it.
So it's a prerequisite to give the above and beyond service.
Yes.
You were doing that from the beginning.
Absolutely.
But it's not enough to really get large growth.
Yeah,
So,
and the truth of the matter is if you're a busy guy and you do a lot of business, some people don't even know that you're interested in having more people do business with you. So ask and you shall receive. The non-asked question is always no. So it's really just a matter of putting yourself out there and letting people know that if they're interested in having their friends and their family and their customers receive great service, good terms on their rate, and just somebody that's good and cares about them, that they need to get them to me because not everybody is going to treat them the same. I have a saying that says that if you're really, really bad at what you do, you try to convince everybody that we're all the same. Don't worry, we're all the same. You can go to any of us. We get the same rates, the same place. And the truth of the matter is if you are outstanding, there's a huge difference between how people are handled and how the rest of the world treats them.
but you could be outstanding, and if the world doesn't know, then you're not getting the growth that you're looking for.
When I got into Buffini, I recognized that there were a lot of people that did what I do that aren't great guys, that aren't great gals, that don't take great care of people. And the way that I can serve them is to keep them away from all those other people. So if I'm really willing to provide them the service, the thoughtfulness, the caring, then a big part of how I can do that is to keep them away from the people that aren't offering that.
Right? You're doing that. You owe it to them to
I
convince
owe it-
them to do business with you because you believe that you're the right place for them to shop.
I convinced myself that it was my duty
Yeah.
to convince people.
I'm listening to a Grant Cardone book, and he talks about that. You have to be sold. You have to be sold on your idea completely sold out on your own product. And if you're not, you might as well forget it.
Yeah.
But once you are, you owe it to people to sell them.
When I first got into Buffini, I was talking to, longtime Buffini guy who very successful in real estate. And he says, I've never seen anybody that's a walking, talking billboard for what they do. And I think, again, like you said, if you're sold on yourself, you have the duty to do that.
Yep.
And it's, you have to be great at what you do so you have the ability to do that.
How much of a lift is it to keep up with that? It's the publicity, the reminding people, asking for referrals. How much of a burden is that?
That's my favorite thing to do because you just get, I have a list I carry around with me. I don't have it with me today, but you literally just call the people that you have relationships with, that you enjoy talking to, and you just check in and ask them how things are going. I genuinely am interested in people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll have a 5 or 10 minute conversation with somebody, and they'll tell me, I think you just found out more about me than, people that are real close to me now.
Yeah.
And I think that is important, to have a genuine interest.
Mm-hmm.
I used to say early in my career before coaching in Buffini, don't worry about it. I don't need to know anything. I'm so good at what I do. Just fill out the piece of paper,
mm-hmm.
and I'll make everything else work. And that was not correct,
mm-hmm.
because the only way you can serve somebody is to listen to them and find out what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You can't just plug in what you think is the best way.
Yep.
But it is important. I think that in the world we live in today, people are too afraid to tell them what they think is the very best way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get involved in that. And I don't have a problem. I say, if I were doing it, this is what I would do. And I think that as long as you're being honest, it's a pretty effective way to sell.
If you're enjoying our episodes, don't forget to subscribe to The Launchpad and like us on Spotify. Just tap one of the links below. By subscribing, you'll get new episodes delivered straight to your library every week. I hear a theme of discipline. It seems like without discipline and the stick-to-itiveness to continue, even when you don't feel like it, has discipline been a big part of the recipe?
Yeah, when I discover a pattern that works, I do it. If I'm trying to get healthy, I know that the more things I can take out of my control, like where I stop to eat, mm-hmm. or what I do as far as exercise, is if I have that under my own control, it's not going to work out well. It just isn't. So what I try to do is establish routines. And if those routines work, I'm pretty good at sticking to them.
Mm-hmm.
And, everybody wants accountability. Everybody wants success. But you have to, the more good decisions you make, the more likely those things are to occur.
Yep. What are some of those things that you stick with? I know that you working out and eating healthy. Something that you said that surprised me is that you still use Buffini's coaching services, and you're paying them thousands of dollars for them to coach Jim Alderman. Jim Alderman ought to be coaching everybody else in my mind, but you still have a coach. That surprised me.
Well, that's funny because my ex-boss, who, David Hancock, who's a mentor, a friend, and somebody that's very close to me, said to me one time, "You're at some seminar?" And I said, "Of course." And he said, "You're the last guy that works for us that needs that." Mm-hmm. And my response was, that's why I'm here. I'm here because if I'm here, I probably don't need to be here as much. So I stumbled kicking and screaming into Buffini, mm-hmm. but I've never wavered in 20 years. I've never said, well, this cost me $7,000. Am I getting the value out of it? When it works, I do it. Mm-hmm. And coaching has worked, and I do it. I've had 3 coaches through the 20 years I've been in Buffini. Probably the one that worked the best was an ex-Marine who was really hardcore on me. Mm-hmm. And I would say, hey, I'm doing pretty good over here, give me a break, and I really didn't want a break, but, he's like, quit telling me that you want to do these things unless you really do, mm-hmm. because I'm going to keep you accountable. If you say you want to do something, it's my job to keep you accountable, and I want to hear from you in 2 weeks that you didn't do anything that we talked about.
Yeah.
So, just like everything else in my life, once I learn something, I'm pretty good. It takes me a few times to learn it, though, usually.
And once you've achieved some success, you probably, the voices of people pulling you along and encouraging you to do more probably start to drown out. And having that coach might be the only voice in your life that's telling you, hey, Jim, you're sucking it up right now.
Well, I have really close relationships with a lot of people, and we keep each other. You know, a good friend is somebody that's going to look out for you. He's going to know your blind spots, where you could get in trouble. You know, there's a saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. When you're involved in something, you're the last person that sees the best way. So it's important to surround yourself with people that not only know you, but they're also as interested in your success as you are.
Yeah.
And my coaches are as interested in my success as I am. And once I can be humble, and once I'm teachable, you know, things usually go pretty well. You know, and there's times where I'll even believe my own ego, you know what I mean, and think I don't need anybody or anything, and that's when I get in trouble.
It's a surprising message from the outside looking in, someone that's closed 17,000 mortgages. I assume that Jim Alderman has everything all figured out and assumes that he has everything all figured out. He has no need for a coach. He has no need for humility. But I'm hearing a different story. It's a that maybe there's a lesson in that, because that's the perception. Looking at successful people, celebrities, you think that they don't need support. They've got something that I don't have. But
I'm a knucklehead. You know, I've had to figure everything out the hard way, and it's okay, because when I do figure something out, I usually don't have to learn the same lesson over and over again. But I think, you know, I've gone through my life and I've seen other people that are successful. And it's like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And I tell people all the time that if I can do it, you can do it. And the truth of the matter is, you know, like I said earlier, the only two things that you have control over is your attitude and your effort. You know, life comes at you. Sometimes you don't know if you're in the middle of a storm, if you're going to get to the other side and things are going to be good. Yep. But as long as you control your effort and your attitude, you know, everything usually... I have a self-fulfilling affirmation, and that is, everything always works out for me. So, you know, I know I'm doing things correctly when I'm driving down the road and my kids say, you know, everything always works out for us, right, Dad? And I said, absolutely. My fiance says, I'm not sure about that saying. She says, I'm not sure if it's true because you say it or you say it because it's true. And I said, exactly, yeah. You know, it doesn't hurt. You know, if you're running around, the voice in your head is going to control you most of the time. And if the voice in your head is saying, this is to something that will work out, that's probably a better saying than what a lot of voices in people's heads are telling them.
Yeah, a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
And you've lived the example that can be true. And whether it actually manifests something or not, who knows? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But it at least tunes your mind in to seeing ways out, opportunities. Then you're open, looking for the door. If you believe there's a door and there's a way out of the situation or a way forward, then you're looking for it. And then when you look for it, you find it.
Well, there's opportunities or problems, whichever way you want to look at things. You know, and I'll have problems or opportunities in my work. And the other person that's on the other side of the situation might want to go to what I call the blame game. It's like, who did this? Why did they do this? And all this other stuff. And I try to say, hey, let's stop all that and let's work together and find the best possible solution. And almost 100% of the time, They work with me, and we get there. And that's, a better approach than trying to figure out who messed up and why,
Yep.
which is what most people do.
Yep. Yep.
Let's just work together. Let's figure this out. We've got everything. I told a real estate agent a week ago, don't worry, everything works out for me. And she's like, what? What does that mean? And I said, okay, maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's true. So I do say it.
It's funny, some things like that you don't, you think them in your head and then you let it out into the world, and it's like not everyone can handle certain thoughts,
She wanted the specific plan that I had, not the, don't worry, everything works out for me.
Yeah. So
I didn't have the plan yet.
So you left a 30-year career at NASB to go to CommunityAmerica. Why?
Well, at the time, it had more to do with what North American Savings Bank's strategy for the future was. The retail lending industry is extremely competitive, and there have been a bunch of people that do what I do that are no longer doing it. I think that more than half, maybe 70% of the people that had a mortgage license a year ago may not have a mortgage license now. So it was more about the marketplace. I never saw myself leaving, but when I saw an opportunity to serve my customers on a higher level than what I could if I stayed, I had to leave. I used to always say, I'll be at North American Savings Bank as long as it's the best place for me to do home loans. And the second it's not, I won't be there anymore.
Did their appetite shift? They were the best place for a long while.
Yeah.
And did they have a shift in appetite with mortgages?
So based on the marketplace, North American Savings Bank changed their pricing strategy on retail mortgages, which made it less competitive. And we're sitting here and we're saying I'm really good at what I do, but if I don't have great rates and great terms, I'm out of business. Yeah. So I was friends with the outside sales manager for CommunityAmerica. He was one of 3 calls I made when I had made a decision that I was probably going to leave and go somewhere else. The beauty is my reputation was good at the time. So I had 30 plus companies reach out to me, and with a thought that, that wouldn't be something I would be interested in. I literally only interviewed with 3, and CommunityAmerica was by far the right fit, the right opportunity, and the place that me and my team could go to. We even stayed in the exact same office. We had been in an office for 4 years. There was a year left on the lease. NASB would have closed up the office when we left. And CommunityAmerica said, call David and see if he wants us to lease the space. So I'm literally working out of the same office that I have been working out. I'm just working for a different place. With a different sign on the door.
Okay.
And really, really, really good products. I mean, CommunityAmerica still is a sleeping giant. They are non-for-profit and gave $9.5 million back to their members last year. So if you have a $300,000 loan with CommunityAmerica, you're going to get a profit payout of about $300 annually. So the members and the people that work there participate in the profit payout that they have every January. And, it doesn't really seem fair for the rest of the mortgage institutions that are for-profit, but it's an unbelievable opportunity for my clients.
It seems like CommunityAmerica is on the upswing. I mean, they have a big presence at Arrowhead, and they have Patrick Mahomes as their spokesperson now, right?
Yeah, and Bobby Witt Jr. too.
Yeah,
who better can you get than those two guys?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the future's bright for CommunityAmerica for sure.
Yeah, and CommunityAmerica is the number one mortgage lender in Kansas City now, and I think that my boss, who acquired us and other people at the time, has been a big part of that. Our volume plus the other new people that he's hired has put us as the number one lender ahead of Fairway. I think Fairway, when I started there, might have been a little ahead of us, but we passed them up, and I think the gap is just going to continue to widen.
Well, it's great to see that your career and your talent and your experience has been able to be plugged into the right place, and you're not doing what you were doing in the wrong place. It's really like a trampoline, it seems like.
Well, I always said, again, I was never interested in leaving NASB, so when somebody called me to recruit me, I would say, you would have to guarantee me way too much money for way too long to even get me to talk to you. But when I did consider the different avenues, upon my exit from NASB, it was three important things, which is my products, my support, and of course my compensation. The other thing too is when I moved from NASB to CommunityAmerica, I was able to take my entire team with me.
Yeah.
And
that'd be a deal breaker. If they wouldn't have allowed that.
Yeah.
And what about NASB? Did they have any gripes with that?
No, the David Hancock was a perfect gentleman about the whole experience. I understand that if you're working for somebody other than him, and you resign, your computers get shut off and you get exited to the door, and you're never allowed to talk to anybody or come back. And David said, you still work here, until you're ready to leave, which was his kind approach to not doing all those things to me.
Yeah.
And he's not an employer. He's more of a father figure and a friend. And he just said, in my exit, he says, I hope your change of employment won't affect our friendship.
Yeah.
So if anybody ever leaves somewhere and gets that sort of response, it speaks to the time, I think, that you had together.
Yeah.
It was good for both.
It's encouraging to hear after a career of doing everything you can to put people first and treat people right, that you would get the gift of that later in your career.
I was scared to death to make the phone call to David.
Yeah.
And he couldn't have handled it nicer and better.
Yeah. Well, Jim, you have a great story, and I think there's a ton to learn from your path that you've walked. I think that your story is, the encouraging thing about it is that it's repeatable. Someone else can do it. If you would just have the discipline and do the right things and do the right things consistently, like you said, that encourages me. And I'd like to follow in your footsteps, and I'm going to implement some of these things with, the referral systems, and because you can see that it works. You've stuck to it. You followed the recipe, and you follow it for long enough, and it works. And I hope, and I'm sure that a lot of other people that watch, they'll take away the same tidbits. And thank you for sharing it with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate having you on. Hey, Rebels. We'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment to rate and review the Launchpad. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners like you. We'd love to talk with you about how we can help, whether that's financing your next deal or partnering with us as a passive investor. If you have any questions or would like to learn more, leave us a comment and one of our team will reach out to you.